Baik, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome to Professor Dr. Osman Bakar and Jamil Osman to invite speakers this day. Okay. Also, thank you all for coming to this moment. Okay, today we will listen to a presentation from Dr. Osman Bakar and Dr. Jamil Osman. Please, moderator Benny Susilo, to guide this event. Please, Benny, silahkan.
Okay, thank you very much, Bapak Agus Darmaji. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa sallim taslima. Ladies and gentlemen, all participants of this seminar, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Today is the second day of the sequence of International Conference on Integration of Knowledge by Team Integration of Knowledge in Indonesian Islamic Higher Education today. I am Benny Susilo, the moderator of today's panel session. I am pleased to meet you and welcome to the session. We have two topics to be discussed. The first is history of the relation of Islam and science, which will be presented by Professor Dr. Osman Bakar. And the second is realization of the integration of knowledge models of curriculum reform, which will be presented by Professor Datuk Wira, Dr. Jamil Osman. Each speaker has about 45 minutes for delivering presentation and closing statement. After the two speakers finish all presentation, there will be a question and answer session. Now, let's join me in welcoming the first speaker, Professor Dr. Osman Bakar. Assalamualaikum, Professor Osman Bakar. Excuse me, Professor, your microphone still mute. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It is nice to meet you in this seminar. May Allah bless you with health and happiness.
Amin, amin.
Before the presentation begins, I'd like to introduce the speaker. He is Professor Dr. Osman Bakar, a doctorate in Islamic philosophy from Temple University, Philadelphia, USA. He is currently holder of Al-Ghazali Chair of Epistemology and Civilizational Studies and Renewal at ISTAJ IIUM. He is also Emeritus Professor in Philosophy of Science at University of Malaya. He was formerly Distinguished Professor and Director of Sultan Omar Ali Saifuddin Center for Islamic Studies, SOASCIS, University Brunei Darussalam. Professor Osman was also formerly Malaysia Chair of Islam in Southeast Asia at the Prince Talal Al-Walid Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, Georgetown University, Washington, D.C., and Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic and Research at University of Malaya. Professor Osman is author and editor of 40 books and more than 300 articles on various aspects of Islam thought and civilization, particularly Islamic science and philosophy, in which he is a leading authority. His most well-known books are Classification of Knowledge in Islam, published 1992, and Tawhid and Science, 1992. His latest books are titled Al-Farabi, Life, Works and Significance, 2018, new second edition, and Colonialism in Malay Archipelago, Civilizational Encounters, 2020. He has been named among the 500 most influential Muslims in the world since 2009. He was made a Dato in 1994 by the Sultan of Pahang and a Dato by the King in 2000. That's our speakers, Professor Dato Dr. Osman Bakar. All participants, ladies and gentlemen, we invite the Honorable Professor Osman Bakar to deliver his speech. To Professor Osman Bakar, time is yours. You have 45 minutes for presentation and closing statement. To all participants, in order to avoid any disturbance, please make sure your microphone is mute during the speech. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator Dr. Benny Susilo, for the kind introduction. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya mursalin. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of ICONIK. There is the faculty of School of Usuluddin, UIN Jakarta, Triple IT, Indonesia, and Chairman Dr. Habib Khirzin. And of course, it's nice to see again Professor Amin Nordin, Professor Agus Mahaji. Even though only online, at least I said, no, it's nice to see your face again.
Yes.
To see your face smiling, ever smiling, alhamdulillah. The topic given to me, history of Islam, the relationship, the history of relation of Islam and science. As you can see, the topic covers a very vast subject, and given the short time at my disposal, I think I can only afford to present the highlights or kind of overview, historical overview of the relation between Islam and science. Anyway, I managed to listen also to some of the presentations yesterday. So I thought, for example, the presentations by Dr. Hussein Arianto and Dr. Haidar Bagher, they already cover something which fits into the topic very well. Yeah. So I will not repeat that. As I said, I am interested in providing really kind of the shaping factors that influence the history of Islam and science. Now, to speak about the topic is essentially to speak about the history of science in Islamic civilization. Now, if we let us remind ourselves that Islamic civilization is more than 14 centuries old now, but still it is the youngest religiously based civilization. Let me repeat, the religiously based civilization. So it is still young. But what we find is that right? Now in 21st century, we haven't got yet, we do not have yet a kind of Islamic narrative of the relation of Islam and science, or the relation between religion and science in Islamic civilization. So I really hope that the younger generation, especially from our Nusantara region, will be able to come up with a good narrative, our own narrative of the relation between religion and science in our civilization. What we have now, which is quite influential, it's not ours, but it is the Western narrative of history of religion and science in Islamic civilization. So in a way, I try in my presentation to provide, in a sense, to provide us an overview of this, what I call this narrative, the Islamic narrative, which is different from the dominant Western narrative about history of science in Islam. Now, I have prepared a few slides. Let me go to the slides. Next one. Yes. Now, let me first clarify the terms Islam and science in the topic. Nowadays, these two terms are not understood in the same way. So when we mention Islam, then we are inviting different meanings, different understanding, different interpretations of Islam. But here, of course, what we mean by Islam here is Islam as the religion, meaning Islam as contained in the Quran, in the Holy Quran, and Islam as contained in the prophetic traditions, both the Sunnah and the Hadith collection. This is what we mean by Islam. And of course, we also mean Islam, the community, the Ummah, because to talk about Islam and science in Islamic civilization, then we have to talk about the role played by the Ummah in the 14th centuries. Right? So there were ups and downs, but as I said, this narrative is yet to be written. Now, what I mean by science, of course, because science is not understood in the same way in Islamic tradition and in modern Western tradition, especially in contemporary world, right? Because I've written a lot on this, regarding the Islamic perspective on science. Now, science as understood in Islamic civilization was not defined in terms of methods. So yesterday we were treated to the presentation that in Islamic science many different methods were used. So it's only in the modern West that try to, in a sense, to sell the idea, to cultivate the idea, to propagate the idea that there is only one method in acquiring the scientific knowledge in the study of the natural world or the physical world, and there is the so-called scientific method by which is meant that combination of the observation and or what it meant by empirical science, which combines observation and experimentation. And at least some do admit that of course there's a role for reason, for the intellect, rationalization in science, but by and large the focus is on the empirical method. What is not, what cannot be verified by the empirical method, even if it is real, that is just dismissed, right? For example, the premise in modern cosmology is that nothing exists except what is perceived by the physical senses, right? So this, but of course, in my discussion, in my presentation, I don't use the understanding of science because we use the Islamic understanding of science, which is independent of method, as long as it is about the study of the natural world, no matter what method, that is accepted as part of science. All right. Now, when we talk a bit about this subject also, it is important to talk about the context. I think we must not forget the fact that scientific activity is very much influenced, shaped by the cultural context, the societal context. So we cannot assume that in every respect, science is universal. On the contrary, science is shaped by the kind of society, the kind of worldview that they have, and therefore we maintain that there are differences in the relationship between religion and science in Islam and in the modern West in particular. So I mentioned here what are these contexts? Yeah? Basically, there are two important contexts, fundamental contexts. First, the theological and philosophical context. So in the case of Islam, that context was the Tawhidic worldview. Islam, with its core perspective of the principle of Tawhid, so we use the word Tawhidic worldview. So the question of, we can use both the word theological and philosophical, depending on how we approach this worldview. Yeah? If the emphasis is on the divine reality, then it's theological, especially when we talk about the attributes of God, the qualities of God in the worldview, then we use the word theological. But if you use more kind of rational language, not bringing in the question of religion, for example, metaphysics, so that is the philosophical context. Then the second context is social. In the case of Islam, then we cannot just marginalize or dismiss the role of the Sharia. The Sharia understood not as understood by many Muslims today, which has reduced the Sharia to a particular domain of laws. Where do I mean that? I mean the Sharia in the sense that used in the Quran, right? That God has provided guidelines, provided laws in order to guide Muslims how to live in society. It is a very, very vast subject. So that social context is always taken into account. Of course, now I would like to go to the shaping factors. Let me go to the next slide. Yes. All right. I would like to go to the issue of the common origin of religion and science in Islam. Because this idea of the common origin, in fact, constitutes the first and foremost shaping factor. All right. So the common origin of religion and science is the first and foremost shaping factor of the relations of religion and science in Islam. In Islam, we argue that we maintain that religion and science have a common origin, and that will guarantee the harmony between religion and science by virtue of the fact that they have a common origin. And because they have common origin, then we are going to have this, in a sense, this idea provides the intellectual, philosophical, and theoretical context of science in Islam. Now, the Quran is the main source of both religion and science. This is a very important principle that we all accept, certainly throughout the history of Islam. This fact, or rather this principle, is maintained, is affirmed, that the Quran serves as the source of both religion and science. It is not the case that, say, the religion is contained in the Quran, but science is not in the Quran. Science is contained in some other books. Yes, of course. I mean, the Muslims refer to science in the works of Pythagoras, of Aristotle, of the Indian science, and so on. But the Muslim philosophers and Muslim thinkers saw the contents of those books as being compatible with the Quran, in the sense that they explain the fundamental ideas in the Quran. So in that sense, we mean that the Quran is the source of both religion and science. So this is certainly affirmed by our scripture. You know, we only need to look at the Quran, to look carefully at the content of the Quran, and you'll see that the Quran is indeed the main source of both religion and science. But of course, there is also the historical evidence, the first revelation. All right, those verses first revealed by the Prophet ﷺ, the Iqra verses, Iqra bismi rabbikal ladzi khalaq, khalaqal insana min alaq, and so on. That those 5 verses, if we look carefully, if we contemplate, reflect, we can see that those verses contain both religion and science. We need to go, first of all, to that origin of Islam itself. All right. So in those 5 verses, we see that both religion and science are mentioned. Certainly, in those 5 verses, you can see the elements of science, the biological dimension of man, and nowadays we refer to that as embryology. And then we have also the question of the kind of epistemology, because it refers to the kalam, al-kalam, which has been understood in the history of Islam as mainly referring to the intellect. You know? The kalam, the pen, symbolize the human intellect, because in its material aspect, the pen has changed from what we have, the instrument we used to write centuries ago. And in fact, now the question now, we don't use the pen in a sense. We use modern digital computers and so on. We write without using the pen. That is the material aspect of the pen, but still we use the intellect. So no matter what the material, the content of that pen, so the pen as the intellect continues to be applicable. So the other one, of course, is the book of nature. It was Islam, inspired by the Quran, that developed the concept of book of nature. And later on, this concept was to influence the West or the Middle Ages, including Galileo Galilei. Galileo was fond of talking about the book of nature, but it was under the influence of Islam. So what we mean is that the book of nature, which is the source of science in terms of the in terms of what inspired the knowledge, is basically understood in Islam as the counterpart of the Quran. Right? In other words, what is contained in the book of nature is explained at the level of principles, not detail, at the level of principles in the Quran. So there is a one-to-one correspondence, if I want to use that scientific phrase. There is a one-to-one correspondence between the Quran and the universe. So that's a very, very important shaping factor. Now, we are talking about the narrative, again, still talking about the narrative, Islamic narrative of the relations of Islam and science, we have to talk about science in a sense, how the relationship was developed during the time of the Prophet Muhammad SAW himself. All right, this is important because in Islamic thought, prophetic precedent, the idea of prophetic precedent is important. In other words, what happened during the life of the Prophet SAW is going to influence the Muslim thought, Muslim thinking about whatever the subject is, in this case, science. So I would like really to see, this is a topic that has not yet been fully developed. The interrelation between religion and science during the time of the Prophet, during the prophetic period. There are some references here and there, yeah, but not yet studied in detail, partly because we are influenced by the modern understanding of science, and therefore we tend to ignore what is not captured by the Western definition. All right, I talk about the unity of religion, science, and the prophetic area. I give an example here, just 2 examples, all right, or 3. I can give you 3 examples here. First, the harmony between prophetic medicine and scientific medicine. This is one of the topics today. One of the, when we talk about religion and science in general, it's a religion and medicine in particular. This is important. So right from the beginning, what was emphasized is the harmony between prophetic medicine and scientific medicine. So it happened, yeah. We have a case in the history of Islam, in the person of one companion, Harith ibn Kalada. All right. So he may be regarded as the first illustrative example. Harith ibn Kalada is mentioned in several hadiths. All right. Now he is described as the physician of the community because the Prophet ﷺ used to refer the Muslim patients, the sick, yeah, among in the community to this medical doctor. Now, so we know very well. We have the question now is when did it happen in the history of Islam when Muslims first came into contact with Greek science, with foreign science? Well, the answer is Harith, which was during the time of the Prophet himself. He was trained. Yeah? He was trained in scientific medicine in Jundishapur, Iran. Jundishapur, Iran, at the time of the Prophet was the leading center of scientific medicine. Many medical figures from Alexandria in Egypt, from Greece, all right, they all migrated to Jundishapur. So you have people from the doctors from India, from Greece, from Egypt. They all went because they were offered very well, they were very good treatment, and Harith was one of them. So when he returned, he came to Arabia, right? He converted to Islam, and his knowledge was used as the Prophet. His son Ibn Nadri also was a medical doctor. But this is a scientific medicine as we understand in modern times. Now, in other words, the Prophet very approvingly, he approved the, in other words, scientific medicine when he himself gave a kind of pronouncements on health and disease under what is known as Atib an-Nabawi, the prophetic medicine. So, of course, I mean, this is very important because it happened during the time of the Prophet. And certainly Ibn Sina provided the synthesis. His canon of medicine of Ibn Sina clearly suggested that prophetic medicine should be made compulsory for medical education. In other words, the foundation of the study of scientific medicine was the prophetic medicine, because there was no contradiction between the two. On the contrary, there was harmony, and Ibn Sina knew very well. Ibn Sina gave a very good definition of health. Yeah. It was based on the prophet, on the prophet's life, in the sense that for him, just like any other Muslim, the most healthy person in the history of humankind was Muhammad, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the most healthy person. All right, and therefore Ibn Sina gave the idea of health when there is harmony and balance between the different components of the human person. Not like the modern medicine. Modern medicine does not have a definition of health. It's a kind of secular definition. Where they have, what is health? Health is the absence of illness. What is illness? Illness is the absence of the health. But that's not a definition we mean. All right. So I think the Ibn Sina's definition is very good. And anyway, he created a synthesis of different sources of medical. Now the other one is of course technology. Again, I say technology in the service of the Sharia has a very important relation between religion and science now. Technology in the service of the Sharia. David King, very leading scholar on Islamic astronomy during the modern period, talks about astronomy being at the service of the Sharia. All right. Now, of course, we are referring here to the companion Salman Farisi, radhiyallahu anhu, whom we all know very well in our seerah, in our history of Islam, during the Khandaq war, that he suggested the use of this underground kind of well, it is in other words about technology of defense, basically defense technology. It's not important that particular form of that technology. What's important is the precedent. In other words, what is the precedent there? Then Muslims should be able to develop technology to defend themselves. That is the eternal message of that. Now, the other one, of course, the question of relationship between spirituality and symbolism and the nexus with science. This is touched by some people, some scholars, but I think this is important because the idea of symbolism, you're talking about alphabetical symbolism, numerical symbolism, the astronomical symbolism, all this, of course, had to do with science, and of course, alchemy. It was mentioned yesterday, the importance of alchemy, Jabir, Hayyan. So the dimension of symbolism is there. In fact, according to the Sufi tradition, it was the Prophet himself who taught his companions, in particular, Sayyidina Ali radhiyallahu anhu, is about this nexus, the nexus between spirituality and science. So science is not divorced from spirituality. Okay, the next one. Now, I have, I hope I'm giving a few more minutes, Dr. Benny. Now, what are the shaping factors in these centuries? The sciences inherited by Islam. We need to understand that, in a sense, the consequences of the global spread of Islam. So during the time of the Khulafa Rashidun, when they, in a sense, when the lands of Islam spread far and wide to the west, right up to Spain, and to the east, to the borders with China, Central Asia with China. So in a sense, Islam spread over a large part of the globe. And in the process, of course, they inherited the sciences from many different civilizations from both the West and the East. So it was the destiny of Islam as a religion to inherit all this to vast amount of knowledge. Of course, the Muslims did not straight away went to study that, because there were priorities that had to observe. But the point is, eventually, what's important is that they had the spirit. They had the spirit to preserve this knowledge heritage from different sources, and during those early centuries, what happened is that a kind of activities with the spirit of Islamization, integration, and synthesis. These terms were not used during that time, of course. All right. To me, what I understand was that there was a kind of Tawhidization, to conform to the perspective of Tawhid. In other words, nowadays we use the word Islamization, integration, and synthesis. But the point is that when the Muslims began to study, to translate, to study the various sources, then they have to come up with a particular way of approaching them. So Islam created the first science of international character, precisely because of that historical development. And included this, of course, the translation movement, because the translation movement was patronized by the state. It was the state that determined the priorities, what to translate and not to translate. So in other words, the priorities were set by the state. And here we need to mention the role played by the non-Muslims, especially in the early part of the history of Islamic civilization. Many of the translators into Arabic were non-Muslims, and later on, of course, we had the Muslim translators. Now, regarding the important role played by patronization of science in determining the relationship of Islam and science, is, of course, the well-known Baitul Hikmah during the Abbasid period. So the Baitul Hikmah must be considered as a very important shaping factor in that history. Now, certainly, what Baitul Hikmah did was, for the first time, to institutionalize research. This was much different from the academy of Plato and Aristotle. We are talking about institutionalization of research in the modern sense. In the modern sense, that's the important thing. I mean, of course, Baitul Hikmah demonstrated the first modern state policy in science. In Islam, produced the first modern state policy in science. No different from what we have. The only difference in the scope. All right. Now the next thing is, of course, the very important period, important factor, the crystallization of Islamic philosophies of science. This is the post-Ghazali period, especially. In my book Tawhid, in my book Classification of Knowledge in Islam, I have dealt with this crystallization of Islamic philosophies of science. I refer to the relationship between Kalam and science, especially in the field of in their cosmology, which is atomistic in nature. Although that was not their main purpose to produce this kind of theory of atom. That was for the sake of theology. But today, there are many Muslims who want to revive Kalam, for example, and those who want to revive Kalam have, of course, had to refer to this aspect of atomistic cosmology. And the other thing that I dealt in my book, of course, the epistemological issue. What was their methodology? So, since this deals a lot with methodology, I will not go into it here. But just to emphasize that Kalam, the relationship between Kalam and science was an important dimension of the relationship between Islam and science. A lot of literature on the subject nowadays. The other one is, of course, the peripatetic falsafa associated with the name of Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina. In fact, when Al-Ghazali chose to criticize peripatetic philosophy, he chose these two figures, all right? There was the pre-Ghazali period, And of course, what Al-Ghazali did as a result of his critique of perspective philosophy in the Tahfut, and then since he explored the other available methods, what are the other possible ways to acquiring knowledge, I think that paved the way. In a sense, Al-Ghazali played a very important role. All right, he was the bridge between the peripatetic philosophy before his time and the post in his later period. For example, when the peripatetic philosophy was revived by Nasiruddin Tusi, Kutubuddin Shirazi. But that was not the only thing. In other words, that remained as a kind of one of the streams of Islamic philosophy. But Al-Ghazali gave rise to the Ishraqi school of Sohrawardi, and later in Iran, in the Safavid Iran, the transcendent philosophical school of the Irfan, which was discussed by Dr. Haidar yesterday. All right, I think Al-Ghazali impacted that. Of course, the other important thing is the philosophy of science is Sufism and science, especially of the Ibn Arabi school. This is a subject that is apparently gaining to be more popular nowadays in terms of how to respond to the new science. All right. Give me just. I think I'm coming close to the end now, because I'm just to say a few words about the relation between Islam and science in the modern period. I just summarize here what we are having in the Muslim Ummah. All right. First of all, the stagnation and decline of Islamic science. So we need to trace, basically the stagnation and decline has been talked about, but still has not been well documented. All right, not been documented. Roughly, we know that there is stagnation and decline. Even Ibn Khaldun, who died in the early 15th century, at the beginning of the 15th century, referred to decline of science in Andalusia, in North Africa. So that was this scenario, or rather, that was the situation in the Maghreb, all right, in North Africa. But that was not the end of science in Islam, because there arose new centers, new intellectual centers. Of course, first in the Ottoman world. But the problem is that we know quite little. We know very little about science during the Ottoman period. I think Muslims need to study. We don't have to wait for Western historians of science to study the history of science. I'm talking of science in the Ottoman from the 15th century until the 18th century or even 19th century. Because according to Professor Dr. Ikmaluddin Sonoglu, the former Secretary General of OIC, who is also a historian of science, he has done something. But according to his study, in other words, except in the military science and military engineering, the Ottoman science still still have a lead compared to Western science, even though they talk about the Copernican theory. But he showed that from the mathematical point of view, the Islamic astronomy was still superior to the Copernican theory. This is something that needs to be studied. And that, of course, we know very little about science, Islamic science in the Safavid period, and also in the Mughal period. These were the last three big empires, right? But we know little. And then, of course, this has been done for the marginalization of science in Muslim education, the neglect of science in the madrasa and in religious school. And then, of course, there came the colonial powers. The colonialism meant the expansion and popularization of modern science and of science in Islam. So we did not have the kind of revival of discourse on Islam and science until the 1950s. The 1950s beginning. And I certainly cite also Nasser when he wrote his PhD thesis on the introduction to Islamic cosmical doctrines. That was he finished that in 1958, 59. Yeah, that was one of the few. In fact, the first kind of the revival, the first kind of discourse of Islam and science. Now, of course, since the 1970s, we have been seeing a growing Western critique of modern science. In other words, it's very interesting that many of the critiques of modern science by Westerners themselves, in sense, support the view held by the Muslim critics of modern science. Yeah, people like certainly like Professor Nasser, Professor Faruqi, Ismail Faruqi, and others. Right. So when of course, when they criticized modern science, I mean, they invited a lot of opposition. All right. But now with Westerners themselves criticizing modern science, all right, then it's a different situation altogether. So in the sense that what is now called postmodernity, postmodern discourse on science, agree with many of the things that was presented by the Muslim critics previously. All right, I have the last slide. So what was the future of the Muslim discourse on Islam and science? All right. So if we look at contemporary science, we look at the trends. Look at the trends in various branches of science. What do we see? I use expression here, science becoming esoteric. I observe that science becoming esoteric. What I mean by that, science has ventured into those areas, all right, which were ignored before, precisely because the emphasis in modern science was on the study of the microcosm, on the reality that exists outside the human being. So the emphasis was more on objective dimension of science by going into the furthest reaches of the cosmos using new technology, all right, but little about what is inside the human being, the universe within. That's when the science becoming esoteric, becoming subjective. So then, since the 1950s, more research on the quantum physics. So that is going esoteric. We're going into the heart of the matter, the heart of matter. Yeah, the subatomic particles, the waves, and so on. Going into very, very non-material foundation of the material world. For that reason, many quantum physicists in the West try to, in order to make sense of their discoveries, Western to Eastern mysticism. They went to India, to look for gurus to explain science and so on. But Sufism was still not yet popular in the West then, but now the situation is different. Now, the other one, of course, the question of the brain, the study of the brain is again going esoteric, in the sense that to see what is really underlying the thinking, the human thinking, and so on. So to study now neurology and even what is beyond neurology. But the point is all going into esoteric subject. But that was not new. In the history of Islam. What is new now is that the Western mind wants to use technology to develop technology to what I use it exotericizing, which is scientific esotericism. In other words, while Muslims in the past were content, were happy with having the knowledge about the mind, the nature of the mind, what is in the depth of the mind, and also about the atom, the reality of the atomic world. Now, people, the modern people, Western in particular, wants to turn that into technology. Yeah. So, in a sense, where we had technology on artificial intelligence, it's an attempt. It is along that line. In other words, to benefit from the esoteric knowledge of the brain, of the mind, and apply to technology. So how should Islam respond to these kinds of development? All right. My own thinking is that, and I've done something about it, is to create a synthesis. In other words, I think the Western, the contemporary science is in need of also kind of knowledge, to give meaning to a lot of information that they have gathered regarding the mind and regarding the structure of matter, the underlying physical world. All right, and this is where synthesis may come as a kind of a good thing. How to create a system? Let me finish the last sentence. Yeah, all right. The role destined for Islam was to create synthesis. All right. Islam is the synthesis of all the previous religions. The Quran is the synthesis of all the previous scriptures. And in history, Islamic science has been the synthesis of all the sciences that came in that Islam has inherited. So now, right now, in the 21st century, I think Islam can again come forward to play the role of synthesis, to create the synthesis of Islamic tradition and the modern and the contemporary knowledge. Inshallah. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Osman Bakar, for such an interesting and enlightening presentation. It is amazing for me. Professor Osman Bakar, in this session, explained about that we have until now no new narration about relation between religion and science and science. What we have today is from Western point of view. Oke, izinkan saya untuk meringkas apa yang disampaikan oleh Profesor Dr. Osman Bakar dalam bahasa Indonesia bagi rekan-rekan yang menyaksikan ataupun mendengarkan penjelasan beliau. Beliau dalam penjelasan yang telah diberikan tersebut menerasikan bahwa kita sama sekali belum memiliki sebuah narasi yang original yang tertulis dalam versi kaum muslimin sendiri menyangkut hubungan antara agama dan sains. Selama ini yang ada adalah narasi yang berasal dari sudut pandang barat. Beliau akan mencoba untuk memberikan sebuah narasi yang baru, di mana narasi ini saya pandang ada di bawah sebuah tesis beliau bahwa sains sebenarnya tidak bersifat universal, tetapi dibentuk oleh lingkungan dan worldview atau pandangan dunia. Lantas dari sanalah kemudian beliau memberikan kepada kita sebenarnya faktor-faktor apakah yang membentuk sains tersebut, untuk nanti sampai kita pada kesimpulan akhir beliau bahwa tugas kita di masa sekarang ini adalah melakukan satu sintesa dari sumber-sumber yang kita miliki dan pengetahuan atau sains modern untuk membentuk sebuah sains yang bersifat Islami tersebut. Beliau memberikan bahwa ada faktor-faktor pembentuknya, ada yang bersifat fundamental, yaitu ketauhidan, cara pandang tauhid. Kemudian juga ada yang menyangkut konteks sosial. Lalu kemudian beliau menjelaskan bahwa kita memiliki sumber yang sama menyangkut agama dan sains, yaitu Al-Quran, dan hadis. Lalu kemudian beliau memandang bahwa ada kesatuan agama dan sains pada masa Nabi SAW, di mana ini belum digarap secara detail. Barat juga belum menggarap ini secara detail, padahal kalau kita bisa menggarap ini secara detail, kita akan menemukan bahwa asal ataupun sumber dari sains tersebut sudah ada sejak permulaan dari Islam. Lalu beliau kemudian menyebutkan beberapa poin yang penting, misalnya seperti pengobatan Islami di masa Nabi, ini yang bersesuaian dengan sains modern kalau kita lihat, kemudian relasi spiritual dengan simbol, kemudian teknologi yang melayani syariat. Lalu dalam perkembangan sejarah peradaban kaum muslimin, sains ini terus mengalami perkembangan, di mana pada masa yang ada masa di mana penerjemahan karya-karya ilmiah, lalu kemudian di masa itulah mulai sains ini memiliki aspek yang bersifat internasional. Pada waktu itu, Profesor Osman kemudian menggagas bahwa sebenarnya dimaksud islamisasi, integrasi, dan sintesa sains tersebut tidak lain adalah sebagai tauhidisasi dari sains tersebut. Seperti tadi tesis beliau bahwa sains tidak universal tapi dibentuk oleh worldview dan lingkungan. Bagaimanakah dengan kita di masa sekarang ini? Nah, ini adalah poin terakhir beliau bahwa tugas kita sekarang adalah dalam hal merespon relasi sains dengan agama tersebut, bagaimana membuat sintesa yang menggabungkan atau mensintesakan antara tradisi yang kita miliki yang sudah berakar sejak dulu dengan pengetahuan yang bersifat kontemporer pada hari ini. Nah, tentu ini sangat mengundang kita untuk memberikan respon kepada beliau. Kita tentu sudah tidak sabar, termasuk saya juga, cuma saya jadi moderator. Tapi simpan pertanyaan-pertanyaan kita, nanti kita tiba pada sesi tanya jawab. Di sana kita akan coba berdiskusi lebih dalam dengan Profesor Dr. Osman Bakar. Sekali lagi kita ucapkan terima kasih yang sebesar-besarnya kepada Profesor Osman Bakar. Thank you very much, Profesor Osman Bakar. Now we continue to the second speaker, Professor Dato' Wiro Dr. Jamil Osman. Let's join me in welcoming Professor Dato' Wiro. Professor Dato' Wiro.
Ya, Pak.
Assalamualaikum, Professor.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Very pleased to see you. May Allah bless you with health and happiness.
Thank you.
Before the presentation begin, I'd like to introduce the speaker, Professor Emeritus Dato' Wiro Dr. Jamil bin Osman was a professor in economic and statistics at International Islamic University Malaysia, IIUM, 1983 to 208, and later as Director and CEO of Insania University College, now International Islamic University of Sultan Abdul Halim Muazzam Shah, Unisham, in Kedah, Malaysia, 2008 to 2013. Prior to working at Insania University, he served as Deputy Dean of Kuliah of Economics, IIUM, 1983 to 1985. Dean of Admission and Records Division, 1989 to 1999. Deputy Director Academic Affairs, 1999 to 2008. At International Islamic University Malaysia, IIUM, and Dean of Kuliah of Economics and Management Sciences, IIUM, 2006 to 2008. He graduated PhD in Economic and Finance from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI, New York, 1988. MSc in Econometrics from Western Michigan University, Kalamazoo, USA, 1981. And undergraduate in Statistics from Central London Polytechnic, now University of Westminster, London, and at Institute Technology of MERA, Malaysia, now University Technology MERA, UITM Shah Alam 1975. Career experience. Research officer at Malaysian Agricultural Research and Development Institute, MERDI, Serdang, Malaysia. Lecturer, Institute Technology of MERA, Malaysia, 1976 to 1983. Founding member and Deputy Dean of Kuliah of Economic, IIUM, 1983. Dean of Admission and Record Division, IIUM, 1989 to 1998. Dean of Kuliah of Economic and Management Sciences, IIUM, 2006 to 2008. Deputy Rector, International Islamic University, Malaysia, IIUM, 1999 to 2003. Rector and CEO of International Islamic University of Sultan Abdul Halim Muazzam Shah, UNISHAM, previously Insania University College in Kedah, Malaysia, 2008 to 2013. Director of IIIT for East and Southeast Asia, 2013 to 2019. Honorary Senior Academic Fellow, board members of University Islam Malaysia, UIM, 2016 to 2018. Senior Academic Fellow, Center of Islamic Economic, IIUM, 2016 to 2019. President of Malaysian Institute of Statistics, 2000 to 2011. Currently, he is the advisor, director of Regional Corporation of IIIT for East and Southeast Asia region. Recently, he has just been appointed as Industry Panel of Muhammadiyah University of Malaysia, UMEM, 2021 until now. Awards. He was awarded several medals from Sultan of Kedah and Pahang, which carry the title of Datuk Wira. In 1998, 2005, and 2011. He was awarded the prestigious Gold Medal Award from the Royal Kingdom of Cambodia for his contribution to Muslim minority in Cambodia, 2011 and 2016. The title of Darjah Kebesaran Gemilang Seri Mahkota Kedah yang dihormati, conferred by His Majesty Sultan of Kedah Darul Aman in 2011, which carries the title Datuk Wira. The title of Darjah Paduka Mahkota Kedah, DPMK, conferred by His Majesty in the 77 Monarch Tuanku Sultan of Kedah Darul Aman in 17th of April 2005, which carries the title of Datuk, the title of Darjah Indra Mahkota Pahang, conferred His Majesty the 68th Monarch Tuanku Sultan of Pahang Darul Makmur on the 28th of October 1998, which carries the title Datuk. Honorary Service Award from International Islamic University Malaysia in 1999 to 2000. Awarded Professor Emeritus by the International Islamic University Malaysia in 2016, and awarded International Gold Medal Award from Islamic Countries Society of Statistical Sciences in Doha, Qatar in 2012. That's our speaker, Professor Dato' Wira, Dr. Jamil Osman. All participants, ladies and gentlemen, we invite the Honorable Professor Dato' Wira, Dr. Jamil Osman, to deliver the speech. To Professor Dato' Wira, Dr. Jamil Osman, time is yours. You have 45 for presentation and closing statement. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Alhamdulillahirabbil
wabarakatuh.
alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Yang saya bahagiakan Bapak Moderator Dr. Benny Susilo. Masya Allah, you have read a very long of CV. I didn't expect it. I think we should give half an hour for you to read that. So taking my time, left another 15 minutes to present. Maybe somebody have given the long CV taken from the internet. Professor Dr. Amani Lubis, Director of UIN. I've been in contact with her. Dr. Yusuf Rahman, the Dean of the Faculty of Usuluddin. Dr. Randas Pak Habib Rizin, the Director of Tripartisi in Indonesia, who have been very instrumental to contact me on behalf of the UIN Jakarta. Professor Dr. Mulyadi, Kartanagara, my old friends also, the head of Islamization program, Sharif Hidayatullah State University for Indonesia, and finally, last is not least, Professor Emeritus Dr. Osman Bakar, the distinguished scholar from ISTAC IUM Malaysia, and finally all the brothers and sisters. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh again.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
First of all, I would like to express my appreciation to the organizer of the conference and director of UIN for inviting me to be part of a prestigious conference organized by Sharif Hidayatullah State University of Jakarta, and to share my little experience on managing an integrated based university in Malaysia. This great effort made by the leadership of the university is very important, because in some universities where the leadership are not very keen on this kind of thing. So inshallah, with this great effort, there will be a change of the image of UIN Jakarta as one of the transformed university from a pure religious university to become an integrated based university. This transformation is important, but inshallah, with this transformation, it will lead to producing variety of graduates in various disciplines, including the conventional integrated with the existing Islamic programs. This has happened when I was transferred to UNISHAM, or Insania University College in Kedah, to transform from a pure religious education or pure religious university to an integrated based university within very, very short period of time. Inshallah, with the dynamism of Dr. Amani, inshallah, the image of UIN Jakarta would be different, inshallah. I will be sharing my little experience of 25 years with IUM in developing the programs and managing the faculty, and my 5 years experience in managing International Islamic University of Sultan Abdul Halim Muazzam Shah, which is known as UNISHAM now, as director of the university. And with that, hopefully it will give some important factors that need to be considered when we come to the realization of integration of knowledge on curriculum reform, maybe even not when you talk about curriculum reform, it affects many other things, you know, which is not easy because the university is not owned by Dr. Amani, not by individual. If it is by the individual, it will be easier. So we need the higher level of approval in order to do any kind of program. I believe that the same thing with in Jakarta or in the process of educational transformation. It can be a fully Islamic university like in Jakarta, and in my case, with my experience with the UNISHAM or Insania University College at that time, or a fully conventional university. These two universities, if there is going to be complete transformation to become a fully or partly integrated based university. So what are the hurdle and the processes that you might be facing? So IIUM was the first integrated based university established in Southeast Asia, maybe. In Asia, maybe the first one was in Pakistan. It was established in 1983. Even though it was established in Malaysia, but it has been co-sponsored by other Muslim countries. So because IUM is not following or not in line with the public universities in Malaysia, and the funding mainly maybe 75 to 80% coming from the government of Malaysia. Why do we need to take international students? Why do you need to take international staff? Why do we need to offer the program in English and Arabic? Why not in Malay? So many questions will come. So this thing has to be brought to the parliament. At that time, Tun Mahathir was the Prime Minister of Malaysia. So it was brought to parliament, it was approved. The paper was prepared by a group of professors from other universities, including Professor Kamal was among the paper writers for this. Finally, it was approved in 1982, and in July 1983, IUM was started to take off with a small campus consisting of a few staff and a few students. And so this is my experience from pure religious university in Saniah in Kedah. It was established 94 until 2008. I was transferred to become the rector there. They have Bachelor of Usuluddin of 19 students, Bachelor of Sharia, 21 students, Bachelor of Arabic Language, 15 students. There are 55 students altogether. So, but by the time that I was there in 2008, the number has grown to 1,800 students. But they offered only 3 programs, Usuluddin, Sharia, and Arabic. There was no other programs being offered. So the degree is conferred by University of Azhar in Egypt, 3 years in this university, and the 4th year is in Cairo. In 2008, when it comes to the new leadership of the state, that's why I told you leadership is very important. The leadership of the state of Kedah at that time, an Ustaz, an old friend of mine, and also an old friend of Professor Osman Bakar, Almarhum Ustaz Azizan and Abdul Razak. May Allah bless him. Inshallah, all the good deed have done to the Ummah. For 5 years, he ruled the state following the Islamic principles. And he told to me, Brother Jamil, we want to convert this university into a full-fledged integrated university like IIUM. So before that, I was reluctant to be director of that university because I'm not an Arabic trained, as been read by the moderator just now, Pak Benny. I was trained in America and in UK. So he said that, okay, follow exactly that IUM model. So we managed to establish during his time the medical faculty, School of Hospitality, School of Banking, Finance, Engineering, Multimedia, Nursing, Information Technology, Business Management, all about 47 programs, in addition to 3 programs that has been with the university before, because he became the chief minister. And of course, he was the chairman of the university. So as a result of that, until 2013, before I left for 5 years, the university has grown to a big campus, as you could see from the first picture, with the lake there. This is the new campus of UNISHAM. You can see 3 campuses, IUM at the top there, Sharif Hidayatullah Jakarta, and you see UNISHAM. This is the campus that has grown from a small one to a big one under his leadership. And of course, after that, you can see many more integrated based universities in Malaysia. Some are under the government, or some under the state, and some under private sector. So, University International Islamic University, UIAM, USIM, USIM International Islamic University Science Islam Malaysia. You have University Islam Malaysia in Sabah Jaya, and University UNISHAM in Kedah. You have Queen's College University Islam Selangor, and of course many others who are implementing the fully integrated based program. The process of educational transformation, this is very important, because as I was telling you, the objective and philosophy university, if the university was established in 1950, for example, which is already 70 years, to change the philosophy of the university, which is not that easy. The university was established during the colonial time, especially in Malaysia. University of Malaya was established during the colonial time. The professors have been trained by the Westerners, in England, except that Professor Osman Bakar, although being trained in England and America, he has still Islamic mind, different from other scholars. So he became a scholar in Islam. And then leadership. Leadership means that leadership of the country, leadership of the university, or in my case, leadership of the state at that time, when the state was managing the university. And then after that, we need the curriculum to develop the curriculum of the university, to recruit human resource, qualified teaching staff, and then teaching and evaluation, and then teaching material. Teaching material is very important. If we develop the curriculum, no staff is going to teach, no teaching materials available, the process of Islamization is a failure. So these are among important key elements in the process of educational transformation from conventional or from Islamic to integrated based university. Student intake is very important. What kind of student that you bring into the university? If you want the university to be taught fully in Arabic, then we need to take students from religious school. Students from religious school might not have studied science and mathematics. So this is a problem for the university to have this kind of student. So students who come from conventional school, they might not have the knowledge of Islam and Arabic. So this is also a problem. So we have to take in between. So what I mean by integrated program in the conventional university, almost all the subjects taught in the program based on integration or Islamization of knowledge. And I give you 3 models of transformation in Malaysia. One is the model 1, which I call it model 1, but nobody call model 1. Yeah, I call it model 1. transformation from a full-fledged conventional university to an integrated based university. Some are in stages, some take involved. So this, which is not easy, I was mentioning to you, is Malaya was established in the 50s. It was established by the colony at that time, the British in Singapore, and transferred to Kuala Lumpur. And Professor Asman was a graduate from this university in the 70s. So I'm sure he knows what it's all about. And he was the Deputy Vice Chancellor of the university before he came to IUM. So this is the kind of training. Okay. Model 2, transformation taking place like IUM. We need the consent of the top leadership of the country, the Prime Minister, for example. So in the case of Malaysia, we are quite lucky because Tun Mahathir at that time, he attended the international conference, the first World Conference on Education in Makkatul Mukarramah in 1977. And he was the Minister of Education at that time. At least, and his good friend was Ziaul Haq in Pakistan. And of course, with the view, the thinking of the leadership who understand what integrated based education is. So when they propose a UM model to be established in Malaysia, and he saw at the paper, he said the original paper was like any other university in Azhar or in Medina, pure Islamic university. But he threw the paper, he said that, no, I want a university that will produce medical doctors who are Islamic, engineers who are Islamic, managers who are Islamic. So this the concept is already in his mind. Also, he doesn't know how to do it. So there is one model. The third model is model of transforming from a full-fledged Islamic university to an integrated based university. Example of UNISHAM in Kedah, as I did. This is a pure Islamic university before, and now it has become fully integrated like IUM. Although the UNISHAM is not as big as IUM, but even most of the program that was established in UNISHAM was taken from IUM, and including some of the lecturers now, they were our students and some were our former staff. So this is the third model. In the implementation process, model 1 is the most difficult, especially in the university, if the university is big and well established. The factors: university philosophy, university leadership, university professors, retraining the senior staff and the junior staff, developing the curriculum, developing the teaching material, and other factors. So this might not be of interest of the very well-established university. Why should be converted into a fully integrated university? The second model is easier than model 1, especially for a private university. We can start from small because decision making can be made by the small committee. For example, when we started IUM in 1983, there were only about 150 students into Kuliah and 2 program. The university selected new staff from other universities who already have some knowledge on IOK and show keen interest in IOK, and we provide them with intensive training. I was lucky to be one of the pioneer staff in the Kuliah and the first deputy dean of the Kuliah, as mentioned by the moderator. We started with the development of curriculum, compilation of teaching material taken from the local university and overseas. At that time, there were not many Islamic material available in the local universities because they don't have that kind of collection. So I have to go to King Abdul Aziz University Center for Islamic Economics to collect even the small article and make photocopy, bring back to the university. So recruitment of staff and training of staff And the other one, as I was mentioning to you, another important aspect of the program is student admission of student. If we take the student from religious school, they don't have mathematics background. We take student from conventional school, they don't have the religious background, and so on. The Model 3 is easier than Model 1 and Model 2. The objective is to provide balanced education of students of Islamic studies. Students from Islamic studies will understand the modern knowledge or will have the second major in modern knowledge. So this is good because the vision of the university is already Islamic. For example, student of Sharia can minor or major or have a second degree in civil law, Islamic banking, finance, Islamic economic, etc. I'll give you an example of two distinguished graduates from Sharia. One from Malaysia, Dr. Muhammad Daud, who is currently the president of IUM. And the other one, Dr. Shafi Antonio, who is currently the chairman of Tazkiyah University College. The university can also establish program based on integrated program, Bachelor Economic, Bachelor Banking and so on, not necessarily to be part of the Islamic program, so independently. So the two successful products of Sharia, as I mentioned to you, which they come from the background of pure Islamic from Arabic University. Both Muhammad Daud from Muhammad Daud was a graduate Sharia from Kuwait, 1983, PhD of St. Andrew in UK, 1990, and he got a Bachelor of Jurisprudence from University of Malaya, 1996. So at the same time, he is the founder and executive chairman of Amani Group. This Amani Advisors Group, operating in 6 cities globally, chairman of the Sharia Advisory Council at the Central Bank of Malaysia, the Securities Commission of Malaysia, the Labuan Financial Services Authority, in the first Abu Dhabi Bank, Sharia Board member of National Bank of Oman, Amundi Asset Management, Bank of London and Middle East London, BNP Paribas Bahrain, and Dow Jones Islamic Markets Index, and many others, of course. So this is the this is the graduate from Sharia who have been transformed to become well-rounded personality with this kind of profession. The second person that I know very well, Ustaz Dr. Shafi Antonio. He got a Bachelor in Sharia in Laws from University of Jordan, 1990, and Masters of Economics from the IUM, and PhD in Banking Finance from Melbourne. Why I mention him, I know him because he was my student in 1992, Master of Economics. I was the one responsible of bringing Dr. Shafi'i to the faculty to impress upon the rector that Dr. Shafi'i can do mathematics. Alhamdulillah, he did it very well. Not only he managed to do it, but he did it very well. Who is Dr. Shafi'i, chairman of the University College of Islamic Economic Tazkiyah, Sharia Advisory Council of Securities Commission of Malaysia and Indonesia. He has been invited by the Prime Minister of Malaysia to become the board advisors in the Central Bank of Malaysia. Can you imagine, as a student here? He's also Sharia Advisory Board of ISDB, Islamic Development Bank. So, in the transformation process, as I told you, after everything has been agreed upon, now it comes to the level of the faculty. Level of faculty is to develop the curriculum, teaching staff, teaching material, academic leaders, and IOP. Academic leaders mean that you must have at least 1 or 2 professors in the faculty who can lead, who gain respect of the other teaching staff. That's very important. Teaching staff training by recruiting young staff, especially those who already had some exposure on IOK. For example, a student who graduated from IUM in various disciplines will be sent for masters and PhD to the same institution or to other similar institutions. So, or provide training to the existing staff, in-house training by sending them to sabbatical leave an institution and offer integrated based discipline. I had experience in Alanga University when we bring senior lecturer from Alanga to IUM for 1 year or 2 semesters. He come to IUM to teach courses, conventional courses, at the same time attending the courses based on integrated base, Islamic economics. So finally he went back to the university. The rector appointed him as deputy dean, and he became the prime mover of program of Islamic economics in Alanga University. That was in 2000, I think, when I was the dean. So collection teaching material, I was mentioning to you. Now it is much easier. Everything is internet. But before, when we started the program in 1983, which is about 30 years ago, there was no material on internet, so we had to go and make photocopy and so on and bring it back. So alhamdulillah, now the collection of teaching material will be much easier. You just set up a committee, and then research and publication on IOK, they will come later. Okay, so developing curriculum for the courses or program, not something easy. During our early stage of developing the program at IUM, we have to start from A to Z. Because we don't have any, there was no university in the country or nearby. I have maybe about what? How many more minutes, Dr. Benny? How many more minutes? Okay.
Around 20 minutes, Professor.
You give me extra, because you read a long CV. Now you give me extra. And then during our early stage in 1983, we start. We started from existing Western curriculum and modified it to suit the Islamic curriculum. So what we did was in the Kuliah of Economics, Management Sciences, we start with Bachelor of Economics program. There was no Sharia, there was only one program at that time. So what we did, we take a curriculum of conventional economic program from one university in Malaysia. So what the government want is that the student who's a graduate in economic must have certain number of credit hours in conventional economics. So these are the list of courses that need to be offered by the university for this program, in order that program to be recognized by the public service department of the country. So we have to fulfill this. So principal microeconomic, intermediate micro mathematics, statistics, econometric, research methodology, introduction to accounting, management, all these need to be offered. So what we did is that we classify the subject into two. One which we call it value loaded courses. I think 18 courses altogether. But from the list above, we classify into value loaded courses and value free courses. Value free courses like mathematics, statistics, econometric, accounting, IT. This one doesn't require much Islamization. Before we are not thinking of to Islamize this subject because they're value free. So what we need to Islamize is this list of 18 courses. This one. So finally, we come up with program Bachelor of Economics program. The Kuliah courses, there are 55 credits consisting value loaded courses, value free courses 21 credits, Kuliah Islamic courses. This is something that we add on. Before that, there was no Kuliah Islamic courses. For any conventional university, there was no Islamic courses. And number 4, university required courses. This one we impose upon the university. The university was small, it's easy to instruct the university. These courses will be required by all the students in the program in the university. And of course, languages, we have 2 languages, Arabic and English, of 16 credits. So from here, we classify into 4. As I was mentioning, what are the courses? We call it value loaded. what are the courses that we call very free, what are the courses that we call fully Islamic, for example, Islamic economic, fixed for economic, usul fiqh, history or Islamic thought, Islamic banking, finance. These are fully Islamic. The others, we teach conventional along with the Islamic view. And the last one, of course, there are Islamic courses also, Aqidah, Quran and Sunnah, and so on. This one. So we already got bachelor academic program, and we submitted to the Ministry of Education. It has been approved, alhamdulillah. So the Islamization of value loaded courses. Now it comes to teaching. Who is going to teach, how to teach, what are the materials? So the framework of our value loaded courses in teaching the various branches for economics, the Islamic viewpoints and concept will be made use of. The base is Islamic. Conventional economic theories will be explained as they are and then evaluated in the light of Islamic values. And exposure to conventional and Western economic theories is considered necessary for purposes of comparison in order that students can recognize the point of departure between Islam and the West and appreciate the distinctiveness of the Islamic approach. And besides, conventional concept and tool analysis, which are value loaded, need to be distinguished from those which are value free or neutral. Okay, so this is the framework of the Islamization that being used. So of course, I can give you example microeconomic and macroeconomic. I think the time is very short. I will not go into that. And then let's move further. When the university is well established, when Professor Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Saman became the rector of the university, and he established one kuliah which we call it Abdul Hamid. Now just recently we named Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman Islamic Review Knowledge and Human Sciences. Before that, it was Kuliah of Islamic Review Knowledge and Human Sciences. This name will be announced, inshallah, on the 5th of November by the rector about the new name, inshallah. So Professor Malik Badri was there. He was very regular going to UIN Jakarta, and these are the courses: Islamization, Human Sciences, and so on. So let me give two examples of the curriculum that was developed by this kuliah. One, Bachelor of Human Sciences, Communication. So they have university required courses, kuliah required courses, the core courses and department courses, and open elective graduation to graduate with certain number of credit, as I mentioned, to be approved by the Ministry of Education. So the university required courses of 20 or to 22 credit has to be taken from this. Okay. Hubungan etnik, tamadun Islam, Islamic worldview, knowledge and civilization, so tilawah Al-Quran, Quranic language, usrah, ethic and fiqh for contemporary issues. These are to be taken from 20 to be selected by as a university required courses. And then the kuliah required courses, Bahasa Melayu, Bahasa Melayu Kejaya, Communication, Malay. And in the final year, they have to do 2 project paper of 3 credits, mainly related to Islam and communication. And then the core courses, they have all the industrial training 6 credit, review knowledge introductory courses 6 credit, two courses to be selected from here. So this is where the Islamic input coming in. And at the department required courses, they have all the courses under communication, and then the department required courses, and then the department specialized courses, whatever area they want to specialize. So the Islamic input has been given here everywhere, but in the teaching of communication, also lecturers are supposed to bring in values. Islamic values into their teaching, into their program. So these are the program. And then the other aspects that we have Bachelor of Islamic Review Knowledge and Heritage. In most Islamic university, they have Bachelor of Usuluddin, Bachelor of Sharia, Bachelor of Al-Quran and Sunnah. So over here, we have Bachelor of Islamic Review Knowledge, majoring in what? So here we have Bachelor of Islamic Review Knowledge, majoring in Usuluddin and Comparative Religion. Similarly, we have university required courses, kuliah required courses, core courses, and elective courses. So the university courses is similar to program in economics or in human sciences. They can select 20 credit hours from here. And then kuliah required courses, advanced tilawah, Bahasa Malaysia, and final year project, 6 credit. This is required by both communication and here. And then we have 72 credit hours of Islamic Review Knowledge courses, Islamic, Arabic, Al-Quran, Fiqh for Islami, Usul Fiqh, Fiqh Al-Sirah, Ulum Al-Quran, Ulum Hadith, Islamic Aqidah, Islamic Ethic, all these are to be taken 30 credits altogether. And of course, the department required courses, all are Islamic and related to Usuluddin. And then we have elective courses which can be taken also. And then the elective courses 6 credit to be taken from here. They can take from other departments, for example, political science, psychology can be taken, although they are in Islamic studies. So that's where the integration coming in between 2 programs. So the same thing with open elective can be taken any subject that offered in the university. They can take from economics, they can take from architecture, they can take from engineering, take from education, as long as that thing is related to the area of specialization. So they can minor in review knowledge. They can have those major in Usuluddin, for example. So this is what they call major and minor. 30 credits of 30 credit. And then so the research experience of the Islamic of the knowledge, the Islamization approach is done as what has been mentioned just now. Economic started with that way to using the concept of integrating within the Western economic theories and Islamic theory. Islamic doesn't have a theory yet, so what we have is to modify whatever the model that we have in the Western theory. For example, we saving. Kalau kita ambil saving ataupun simpanan, saving berdasarkan based on income. The more money that you have, more money you can save. Based on interest rate, if the interest rate is high, then you tend to save. So that is Western theory. There's nothing wrong to have a theory of this model, but interest rate should not be the main factor. Maybe the Islamicity is a factor. The profit rate, for example, is the factor. That the model can be modified from conventional model to become Islamic model. But you can still use the same mathematical model. So, and then I don't want to go into the process. From 1988 to 1998, when Abdul Hamid Sulaiman was the writer, he was instrumental in popularizing his version of tripartite approach to Islamization. So that's why he established the Kuliah of Islamic Review Knowledge. Okay, through this kuliah, the integration of knowledge become a reality. But after his retirement, he realized that through education alone, through Islamizing alone is not sufficient. So he said, to change the ummah, it will be more effective to start an early childhood education. So Islamic education should be given from the early childhood. This was a significant shift of Islam from Islamization to per se to Islamization of human. So we may produce Islamic graduate, but the character, the behavior are not Islamic. They may have a lot of knowledge in Sharia, but they are not following the law, for example. So human is very important. So when Professor Kamal became the rector of the university, he had the same view that there was an argument between Professor Kamal and Abdul Hamid. Professor Kamal want to have small number of student intake. Abdul Hamid want to have 10 times bigger than what Professor Kamal want. So he asked Professor Kamal, if you take 100 students, let's say 99 become fully Islamic, only one will deviate. So you have only 99 students. But if you take 1,000 students, let's say 10% deviates, you still have 990 students, which is better than having only 99 students. So that was his argument. So finally, we tend to agree that we have a bigger intake of students to give opportunity to more people to study the program on Islamization of knowledge at IUM. So Alhamdulillah, it has been a successful model. According to Prof. Kamal, it's in line with our rector. So the original objective of IUM was to produce competent Muslim professionals who are excellent in their field, at the same time having good Muslim character and IOK. So curriculum development is important, but there are other factors. So I will make it fast. So Islamization success at IUM, most of the people who responded to the survey found that the success has been achieved in a number of important areas of Islamization. These include vision and mission by IUM, highly qualified academician, Islamized curriculum, student and research publication. So IUM had the mission. The mission of IUM is in Islamization, integration and internationalization, and Center for Academic Excellence. So all this was a great success to IUM, and as compared to other conventional universities in the Muslim world. So among the greatest achievement of Islamization is that the core of the vision and mission, so this makes it easier for all the students and university staff and outsiders. This one not only applicable to students, but also to academic staff. The capable, skilled academicians, the university has managed to attract the trained, high-quality Muslim academicians from Malaysia and other parts of the world. And a large percentage of scholars at IUM are qualified at PhD level. And many of the scholars interviewed in this express found it to be useful. And then the curriculum, it is very important aspect of the curriculum of different kuliah and department. A number of approaches are used in this approach. First, the comparative approach, as what has been done in economic, whereby the same program, different courses deal with Islamic and Western perspective. The second approach was that integrative, whereby the same course of Islamic and Western are taught by side. In this approach, the assignment and examination for those courses will involve both Western and Islamic perspective. This is the ideal which is rarely used, which is quite difficult. The third approach is mainly the technical and professional courses which have the philosophy of presupposition. In this case, focus not on the course content, but rather than inculcating the positive Islamic character among the students. So for people in engineering, in architecture, in medical, will be different from Islamizing in the program.
Okay, excuse me, Professor Dimohon. Your time is running out.
I will finish.
Okay.
1 minute, is it?
Okay, please.
I will finish 1 minute, inshallah. So I don't want to go into detail. Others are research publication, and then many things that now, for example, developing teaching material is under this initiative of the IIT, So it is very important that, so in the conclusion that IUM has achieved many successes in Islamization, including the inclusion of Islamization and integration of IUM vision and mission, the quality academician who was sought after the consultant in Malaysia, integrated curriculum which combine modern discipline and aspect of Islamic worldview, quality student, and many of whom go to make significant impact of their community upon graduation. Among the areas which need improvement, research and publication, and the provision of Islamized textbook. So this is Tripartite is taking the initiative on the research on Islamization. Tripartite has been sending money to Malaysia, to IUM to require staff to undertake the research and to write textbook on the courses that have been teaching. Inshallah, we will share with other universities in Indonesia when it is completed. Although it is written in IUM, but it's for the consumption of the Muslim Ummah everywhere. So with that, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Pak Benny, for giving me extra 20 minutes.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for Professor Jamil Usman for such a very interesting and enlightening presentation. Para peserta yang saya hormati, apabila kita mendengarkan penjelasan dari Profesor Usman Bakar, kita mendapatkan sebuah sudut pandang baru bahwa integrasi ilmu pengetahuan adalah hal yang memungkinkan untuk terjadi, baik dari aspek sumber-sumber yang telah kita miliki maupun prinsip-prinsip yang ada di dalam Al-Quran yang merefleksikan kenyataan ataupun realitas konkret eksternal. Dan kita pun juga mendapatkan bahwa dalam rentang sejarah perkembangan kebudayaan Islam terjadi tahap-tahap di mana pengetahuan ataupun sains di dalam Islam sebenarnya tidak terjadi pemisahan. Cuma kecelakaan kemudian kita mendapati kondisi di mana sains dan agama terpisahkan. Dalam pandangan Profesor Usman Bakar, kita mendapatkan bahwa sekarang yang akan kita lakukan adalah bagaimana mensintesa kembali sains dan agama tersebut. Dari sudut pandang kebenaran yang bersifat pragmatis, tentu kita akan bertanya, apakah mungkin untuk dilakukan? Kalau mungkin, apakah ada contoh yang sudah berhasil? Apa yang disampaikan oleh Profesor Jamil Usman kepada kita menjawab pertanyaan tersebut, bahwa integrasi pengetahuan yang disebut oleh Profesor Usman Bakar dalam istilah tauhidisasi, sementara Profesor Jamil Usman menyebutnya islamisasi, adalah sebuah konsep yang mungkin untuk diterapkan dan bahkan sudah diterapkan oleh Profesor Jamil Usman, di mana beliau memberikan kepada kita penjelasan ataupun kisah pengalamannya 25 tahun di Indonesia, menyusun bagaimana sebuah institut Islam menjadi sebuah institut yang terintegrasi dengan seluruh cabang-cabang pengetahuan. Bagi rekan-rekan yang tentu mempunyai pemikiran yang bersifat institusional dan juga mengerti pada proses input, proses output, dan outcome yang selama kita jalankan di dunia pendidikan, dapat memperoleh gambaran apa yang dimaksudkan oleh Profesor Jamil Usman tersebut. Hanya saja sayangnya saya tidak bisa merinci poin demi poin karena saking padatnya presentasi yang beliau berikan. Maka marilah kita masuk pada sesi yang selanjutnya. All the participants, ladies and gentlemen, now we are in question and answer session. Anyone of you who has any question, please feel free for asking. Our speakers will be happy to answer. Raise your hand, mention your name and to whom your question is addressed, and state your question briefly. Well, we start with three questioners. Any one of you?
Can I ask?
Okay, please, Professor Dr. Mulyadi Kertanegara.
Just simple questions to Professor Jamil Osman. Regarding the Islamized textbooks, how far is you're succeeded in this, and is it possible for us to share your textbooks so it can be used in, for example, in the UI and on? As for Professor Bakar, I think it's not question. It's a good idea for us to transcribe all the speakers' presentation to make it to publish as a book. And Prof. Osman Bakar is ready if someone transcribe, and he will edit it, so it will be very nice. So that is my questions to Prof. Jamil Osman, and my commentary to Prof. Osman Bakar. Thank you.
Excuse me, Professor Jamil Osman, your microphone is mute.
Thank you, Professor Maldi. Actually, the initiative to write the textbook was initiated by Almarhum Professor Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman when he was alive. He initiated by giving the fund to a group of lecturers from the Kuliah of Living Knowledge, the Kuliah that he initiated during his writership. So he took very serious interest, not only by giving money, he keep on traveling at least 3 or 4 times from Saudi Arabia to see the progress of the first 16 textbook was promised to him to be completed. Unfortunately, only 11 completed. The others stopped halfway, did not proceed. Maybe they find it difficult to convince their knowledge. So finally, Alhamdulillah, we managed to print 11 textbooks, and now it is online. Personally, it is online,
Okay.
which can be accessed throughout the world. So under Kota Buku, I will give you the link.
Okay.
Inshallah. And then the second stage after that, Abdul Hamid instructed Omar Kasuli to come, add more money to IUM, and now I think about 65 to 70 books are in the pipeline, and many has been completed. So hopefully, inshallah, the book will by middle of next year, or by the end of next year, we should have at least another 60 to 70 more books. But next year, we still keep on giving more fund to the lecturers in various disciplines. So we hope that the book might not be completed within this 1 or 2 years. It may be after 10 years, Professor Moradi is not no more in the university. 10 to 20 years, your children become Professor Moradi that time. So they don't have any problem when they come. Oh yes, there is a textbook, easy for them to teach. But during our time, maybe it was difficult. There was no textbook at all. We just looked at the published papers by the scholars and so on. Professor Maldi is lucky you have the scholars in your mind. You are with the Ismail Faruqi, all his working with Ismail Bakar together in the team. But for us, when we started, it was nothing. So we were able to find the book on Islamic economics. What we have only 4 or 5 books by Najatullah Siddiqui, by Anas, by all these books. It's limited. We use the same material from year 1 to year 4 because there was not much material being used. So inshallah, we pray to Allah that. And the project for writing textbook is not restricted to IUM only. Maybe UIN Jakarta can start with Islamization of psychology. Since Professor Muradi is there, you can initiate, and then we can Pak Habib can give recommendation to request fund from Riyadh to be transferred to Indonesia for the textbook in other universities in Indonesia. InsyaAllah.
That's a very good idea.
But the best thing Professor Muradi is to be written based on the curriculum that been taught in the university. I know your university has the Islamic psychology, so we can start. We can start with Islamic psychology, whatever it is. So perhaps I think Dr. Muradi can initiate this, inshallah.
Okay.
20 books maybe next year from UIN Jakarta. And then other than that, we have the translated books. Because the previous book that was published by IIIT was more on reference book. It's not a textbook to be used by undergraduate student. Now we have to bring the lower level for undergraduate student. So, but although the majority of tripartite board did not really agree on writing textbook, because tripartite will go for more highly intellectual book, but for the people who are on the ground teaching the course, they need the textbook. And recently we sent one copy of Islamic economic book published by ISRA to Dr. Tonji. He was very impressed with that textbook. He said that this one can be used by university professors. It is going to be translated to many languages, he said that. So this shows that it is a kind of textbook, but it has the quality. Do not have the quality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor.
May I continue the discussion between Professor Mulyadi and Datuk Jamil?
Yes, please, Professor Habib Chiri.
Thank you. I would like to pursue further this discussion between Professor Mulyadi Kartanegara and Professor Datuk Jamil that it has been mentioned by Professor Datuk Jamil that we have been working very hardly on the integration of knowledge and then in the curriculum reform and then followed by the textbook writing, as I have mentioned yesterday. It also became interest of the Dean of Faculty of Suluddin, Brother Dr. Yusuf Rahman, the textbook matter, that as I have mentioned yesterday, that with the guidance of Professor Datuk Jamil, we have initiated also on the textbook writing for FEBI, for Faculty of Economic and Business Islam in the University, State Islamic University of Imam Bonjol. I think we have 11 textbooks written by 11 UIN and EIN and also Stein, coordinated by the former rector of State Islamic University of Imam Bonjol, Professor Dr. Ika Putra Birman. And also in Gontor, we have 6 books, all on the economics, also by guidance of Professor Datuk Jamil. And in in the Muhammadiyah University of Surakarta, we have 12 books. And in UII, which is Islam Indonesia, we have 11 books. In all of the disciplines, I'm happy to mention here that for the textbook writers in Universitas Muhammadiyah Surakarta, it has been chaired by ladies because most of the dean are ladies. Yeah. So it's interesting in the Faculty of Medical Faculty, Pharmacy, and even in architecture, also by a lady. Alhamdulillah. And let me also express my highest appreciation to Professor Usman Bakar and Datuk Jamil, as I have mentioned yesterday, that the Faculty of Usuluddin of UIN Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, it has been pioneering in the integration of knowledge in cooperation with IIIT. Professor Datuk Jamil, Datuk Usman Bakar, along with Professor Umar Kasuli, the Secretary General, he is currently becoming a visiting professor in the Faculty of Medical Faculty of King Fahd Medical Center, and become also the advisor to the Ministry of Health in Saudi Arabia. Both of them has very kind to be speakers in the first program of integration of knowledge in State Islamic University of Jakarta during the first day of Professor Kamarudin Hidayat, and Professor Kamarudin Hidayat along with Professor Quraish Shihab also became speakers in the event. And Professor Osman Bakar also went to State Islamic University of Palembang, Raden Fatah, when it was EIN, and then in Makassar, and also in Yogyakarta and some other cities. And Professor Datuk Jamil Usman have been working very tirelessly with us from Aceh to eastern part of Indonesia. Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Datuk Jamil. And I witnessed also his success in developing the integration of knowledge and developing the Insania College to be full-fledged university, Insania, and now become Unisham. Datuk.
Yeah,
I went there with Brother Sahran, and I witnessed the success of the integration of knowledge as well as of the full-fledged university. So during our discussion in preparing this program, I always emphasize two things. First, about the fundament of this integration of knowledge, fundamental of Islamic knowledge, Islamic science, Islamic epistemology. And second, the implementation. I'm happy that today both professors have been very beautifully and clearly explained both of the fundamental about the Islamic knowledge and also about this integration of knowledge. So thank you, Professor Datuk Jamil and Professor Osman Bakar, and thank you to the moderator. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you very much, Professor Al-Sistin. Oke, sekarang kita coba apakah ada dari teman-teman mahasiswa?
Moderator?
Yeah.
Ask some questions.
Yes, please.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My question thank you very much, moderators. My question for the Professor Dr. Osman Bakar. Please, excuse me, I want to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Khalid Al-Walid, a lecturer of the Islamic philosophy in Usuluddin faculty, and also the one of the committee of this seminar. I am also the student of Professor Dr. Buryadi Kartanegara in the study about the Islamic philosophy. My question is about the science of Sakra, Professor Osman Bakar, sorry. The problem here is maybe some obstacles to the understand about the Islamic Sakra. There is just a theory, not a factual. When the difference of the modern science, I think this is just about the worldview, not the reality of the science. When the model, when you or the others thinker about the in the Islamic perennials to introduce that is a science sacra. This is a holy science. You back to the era, the Prophet era or the Khalifat era. I think this is just romanticism. This is some thinker that say that is the science sacra is a utopia or utopia. We didn't find the reality. I visit some Islamic university in the other Islamic country, also in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and the other Islamic country. I not found when the medicine science faculty, we found that that in the medicine science or science faculty is not different with the modern science. So in these sessions, I want to ask you about these problems, and I hope you can make clearly about this problem. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Professor Khalid Al-Walid, your question and your concern. First, let me be clear. Are you referring to sacred science, the term? Is it science sakra?
Yes, about the sakra, science sakra. Yes, I read about your book also, and also the Syed Hussein Nasser books about the science sakra. I believe that in Islamic, we have in Islamic civilization we have science different with the modern science, but some objections about the science sakra is not factual. This is just a theory. Can you explain clearly about this problem, Professor Osman Bakar? Thank you very much. I met you before in the Islamic College for our study. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I understand clearly what your concern is. First of all, I think I have to say this, right? There are misunderstandings here and there in the world today about the concept of sacred, right? In other words, not everybody who talks about sacred science is necessarily correct in the understanding of the word sacred science sacred. What it means is that science that is based on the Quran, because the Quran is a sacred book. It is not just like any other book, right? It is sacred because it comes from God. Who is the sacred? Because the sacred reality refers to God, refers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, refers to Him, His nature, His names, His attributes, His qualities, all given in the Quran. Our knowledge about God, which is sacred, all right, that is given in the Quran, and that has practical applications. It's not to say, it's not correct to say that sacred science is only about theory, but not practical, all right? Now, when we go into the practical dimension of sacred science, we have to bring in the Sharia, which is the sacred law. So you see now, the sacred goes to the practical domain of applying the theory. So that's why in my presentation earlier, I said the social context of science in Islam is the Sharia. In other words, a social environment which is dictated by the Sharia. Again, I emphasize, because the word Sharia is being misused today. And we have to be very careful what we mean by Sharia as the sacred law of Islam, the revealed law. Sharia is understood in a comprehensive sense, which includes our prayer, which includes our the societal aspect, and not just the limited. Some people only talk about Sharia means hudud. That is not our understanding of the Sharia. Sharia is about God's laws that exist in both natural world as well as in the human world, right? God's laws in society are counterparts to God's laws in the natural world. So discovering knowledge about God's laws in the natural world, that is not, that's very practical. It's a practical question. So I want to make that quite clear, all right? That sacred is not only about theory, but it is also about practice. And of course, you're at the point, you raised on the point, to go back to the Prophet standards, a kind of romanticism, maybe some being romantic, but I don't look at that way, all right? In other words, to know the precedence during the time of the Prophet is very important from the viewpoint of Islamic thought, Islamic practices, because they will influence us. So when I brought out the question, for example, the unity of prophetic medicine and scientific medicine, all right, that is not romanticism as they understand it, some people understand. No, it is a practical issue right now. Today we have pandemic, right? So, but there's little discussion about the issue of health. The question of vaccination, as if vaccination is equal to health. No, what do you mean by health? It's that is from the question now. I mentioned earlier, in modern medicine, they do not have a clear definition of health. They say health is absence of illness. Illness is absence of health. But Ibn Sina, whose book, Canon of Medicine, right? That was a textbook in Europe, a medical textbook in Europe for hundreds of years until 18th century. When the West decided not to have him as the textbook anymore, it's nothing to do with the argument is not because that book is no longer relevant, but the issue is that the European mind has turned to another direction in the way we look, we look at the world. But there's no doubt that the issue of health, if you want really to bring about health in the holistic sense, all right, then Ibn Sina is still a good source of reference. And there are today historians of science, philosophers of science and medicine who are studying Ibn Sina, all right? So I think we cannot, but that's still sacred science. In other words, what is written in the Ibn Sina's book, that is sacred science, because sacred science means that our relationship with God is not cut off. Modern science cuts off the relations of human being from God, both in the mind and in practice. But Islam refused, religion Islam refused to cut off that relationship between man and God, both in our mind and in human society. So that you know. So in other words, please don't try to understand sacred in the way it is understood in the West. So I think one reason why for people like, for example, Saif Nas and myself use the word sacred, because it's just to emphasize something different what the ordinary, the mainstream thinking in the West. To distinguish that, because they talk about profane. In other words, no, we want science that has nothing to do with God, that has nothing to do with spirituality. All right, let's just do the empirical science. Anything other empirical science, that's not acceptable. But precisely because we want to emphasize the connection between human and God in a world in which God has been forgotten, or in a world in which knowledge is cut off from God. All right, I think that's why we use that. I'm not sure now whether I have any, but given my understanding of the sacred, right, in other words, it's cut off revelation. Basically, revelation is the source of the sacred. You know, today, there are some people, for example, who reject the religious scholars of the past because they say, what's the difference between them and us today to understand Islam, for example? What is important is reason. What is important is the place and role of reason, akal, all right? But this is important, and this is an important issue. There's a difference. It depends on how we use our reason. So in the history of human thought, there are two ways in which reason has been used. One way, we use reason without cutting off from wahyu, from revelation. The other way is we cut it off. Reason, akal, is cut off from revelation. So there are two different ways. If only we can see what is going on in the mind of the person who is thinking. One person thinking, using his reason, he never dismiss revelation, or his way of thinking is always connected to revelation. The other one in my mind is, no, the revelation is entirely absent. Forget about that. So it's a question of whether they want to study a branch of a tree as a branch that has been cut off from the tree or as part of the tree. That is the issue. How to study something in the relation to the broader picture. And this is where Islam feels that it can do more justice. Modern science just to study a particular reality around that reality, just as a reality. Forget about the rest of reality. It's a fundamental issue here. So I don't think it's proper. To me, it's not appropriate to say that secular has nothing to do with practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bakar. I get your point. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for Professor Usman Bakar. Anyone of you have any question, you may state in Indonesian. I will translate into English, please. Silakan yang akan bertanya dalam bahasa Indonesia, saya akan terjemahkan dalam bahasa Inggris.
Kalau mau saya jawab dalam bahasa Indonesia juga boleh, bisa.
Oh, boleh, silakanlah Datuk.
Atau bahasa Malaysia, bahasa Melayu lah. Ya.
Silakan, ada yang akan bertanya?
Kalau tidak ada, boleh saya tanya Prof. Usman.
Silakan Prof. Mulyadi, pakai bahasa Indonesia saja Prof. Mulyadi, biar yang lain bisa dengar. Ya, biar yang lain bisa mendengar.
Ya, saya tertarik untuk menanyakan soal symbolism of number and the relation to science. How is it possible in these times, to use that as the part of this Islamization of knowledge? Thank you.
Terima kasih Profesor Mulyadi atas pertanyaan itu. Konsep simbolisme, science symbol, lambang, sains lambang. Ini satu aspek penting dalam pemikiran falsafah, tetapi dalam tamadun Islam dan peradaban Islam juga penting dilihat daripada perspektif sains. Ini tadi isunya nombor. Sebelum dunia modern, teori tentang nombor itu berbeda. Nombor bukan hanya dilihat sebagai kuantiti, tetapi juga quality. Peradaban modern yang merubah keadaan itu, yang mengenepikan konsep quality. Ini untuk memahami kita harus mengkaji tentang sejarah pemikiran di Barat. Suatu Galileo sebenarnya itu, ada perbahasan debat yang luas di dunia Barat, di kalangan intelektual Barat, pemikir Barat, adakah konsep quality itu mempunyai apa-apa makna, arti? Sedangkan sebelum itu sama ada Kristen Barat Kristen ataupun Islam terima. Nombor itu ada dua aspek. Satu quantity, quality. Jadi yang berhubung dengan quality itu sebenarnya yang mengaitkan kita dengan simbol. Jadi nombor 1 itu ada pribadi, ada kepribadiannya. Nombor 2 itu ada kepribadian yang tersendiri. Nombor 3 ada kepribadian sendiri. Ini bukan kuantiti, ya. Nombor 4 itu ada kualitinya. Ini itu dikatakan the science of quality of numbers. Ini lambang ini penting, ya. Kalau tanya gunanya lagi zaman kita, ya. Tapi kalau kita tanya ini kepada artis-artis, para seniman, arsitek, okay, yang masih berfikiran tradisional, mereka kata nombor itu ada maksudnya, ada maknanya, ya, yang bukan hanya soal kuantiti. Cuma kebetulan jadi macam huruf Jawi, huruf dalam bahasa Arab, alfabet Arab itu, alif itu ada nilai, ada nomor nilainya. Bah itu ada berapa? Sa itu ada, ya. Ini katakan alphabetical symbolism, bahwa huruf alif batu itu sendiri semua ada mana, ada simbolnya. Ini sebab itu bila kata alif lam mim, iyalah kita selalu kata hanya Tuhan yang tahu. Betul, hanya Tuhan yang tahu. Tapi tidak bermakna tidak ada orang yang tahu langsung. Ya mesti ada. Jadi apa itu ya secara pendeknya persoalan itu harus dilihat dalam konsep yang lebih luas, yaitu dalam alam ini, alam semula jadi ini, dalam tabi'i ini ada aspek kualiti. Sains Islam enggan menggugurkan itu, enggan mengenepikan itu, ya. Aspek kualiti juga harus dikaji. Jadi itu sebenarnya yang dimaksud dengan ayat-ayat, tanda-tanda itu, ya. Tanda tidak bisa difahami dengan kuantiti, ya. Nilai tanda itu ialah pada lambangnya, yaitu simbol itu menunjuk kepada hakikat yang lebih tinggi daripada apa yang akan terlihat pada aspek kuantitinya ataupun aspek fisikal. Ini dalam sejarah sains Islam, ini semua penting. Kalau kita baca tulisan Al-Farabi pun, seorang ahli filsafat peripatetik, dia akan sebut di situ nombor itu ada aspek kuantiti, ada aspek kualiti. Kualiti tidak bisa dicampur, ditolak, didarab, dibagi, tidak bisa. Ya, sebab kita itu aspek yang ialah, tetapi tidak bermakna kualiti tidak ada nilai. Kualiti merupakan satu aspek daripada hakikat realiti alam ini. Ada suatu kehilangan besar kepada manusia apabila kualiti itu dibuang daripada pemandangan kita. Hanya kuantiti. Itu yang René Guénon bilang, kita sekarang hidup dalam zaman the reign of quantity. Zaman kuantiti bermahajarela.
Satu lagi, Prof, hubungan dengan itu, bagaimana astrologi itu? Apakah itu sains atau bukan sains astrologi?
Astrologi ini, Prof, ada dua. Ada yang betul, ada yang mengarut. Ada yang betul, ada yang karut. Ya, ada yang tidak berdasarkan kepada sains, ada yang berdasarkan kepada sains. Banyak ahli falsafat Farabi itu menjelaskan begitu. Jadi yang ada amalan yang mengapa Islam menolak sebahagian daripada astrologi itu, kerana itu sudah dijadikan satu cabang ilmu untuk membuat prediction, ya, membuat prediction, tekaan, membuat andaian-andaian tentang apa akan berlaku di masa depan dan melihat tentang behavior, ya, perilaku bintang-bintang dan planet-planet itu ada makna berkaitan dengan baik atau buruknya. Itu yang syariat memperingatkan muslim harus hati-hati, bersadar, ya. Tapi astrologi dalam pengertian yang asal berhubung dengan soal makna kualiti yang ada pada planet-planet. Ya, sebab semuanya tidak ada sesuatu pun yang tidak mempunyai aspek zahir dan batin. Ada aspek zahir dan batin. Sains modern hanya mau yang zahir. Tetapi sains Islam mau dua-duanya sekali. Itu beda.
Terima kasih.
Baik. Apakah ada yang akan bertanya lagi? Yang akan bertanya silakan angkat tangannya.
Saya nampak tadi ada Karimullah. Ya.
Apakah Karimullah akan bertanya atau tidak?
Tidak, Pak. Tadi kemencet.
Oh, tidak. Baik. Baik, apabila tidak ada pertanyaan lagi, all the participants, ladies and gentlemen, we finally come to the end of the session. Let's join me to thank the speakers for the very interesting and valuable presentation. Thank you very much, Professor Osman Bakar. Thank you very much, Professor Jamil Osman, for your presentation. And also, I'd like to thank all participants for lively discussion. Finally, let's join me to close the session by saying Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
I hand the event back to MC Bapak Agus Darmaji. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Baik, terima kasih pada moderator Pak Beni Susilo, juga kepada invite speakers today, Profesor Dato Dr. Osman Bakar dan Profesor Dato Wira Dr. Jamil Osman. Terima kasih sekali lagi ya. Let's give applause for them. Okay, thank you. Prof. Osman, several years ago, I forget exactly, had collaborated and visited the Faculty of Usuluddin, as explained by Brother Habib Hirsin. We have an event, and at the event, there is entertainment for Brother Nanang Tahqiq, Mr. Nanang Tahqiq. He sings a song. You remember, Prof. Osman?
Play guitar.
It's a pity that Mr. Nanang Tahqiq has preceded us. He died about 1 year ago. Oke, karena memang ini acaranya sudah habis ya. Next schedule is closing ceremony, and the closing by siapa nih? By nggak ada orang. Oke. By me, oke lah, by me, oke. Oke, by me ya, oke. Saya akan mencoba untuk menutup acara ini. Walaupun acara sebelumnya masih ada acara, yaitu parallel session ya setelah acara ini. Baiklah, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will close this international conference. Although there are still parallel sessions after this event. Because parallel sessions use different Zoom link. On this occasion, with the Zoom link, I will officially close it. First of all, we would like to thank the invite speakers both on the first day and today, especially today to Professor Dr. Osman Bakar and Professor Dr. Jamil Osman. We appreciate your contribution to this conference. I hope it will be useful in academic development at higher education in Indonesia, especially UIN, Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta. Furthermore, to Mr. Habib Hirsin, as the triple IT representative in Indonesia, thanks you for your help so that this event can be held. To Rektor UIN Sekretariat Jakarta, Ibu Profesor Dr. Amani Lubis, thank for your deliver opening remarks and also to open the program officially. To the Dean of Fakultas of Usuluddin, Dr. Yusuf Rahman, thank for your welcoming speech. Also to moderators and reviewers of parallel session and all the committees who have helped, especially Professor Mulyadi Kartanegara. Thanks for your keynote speak and collaborated Professor Aminuddin, Professor Amsal Bahtia, Professor Khalid Al-Walid, especially to Salman, who is always already 24 hours. And the other that I cannot mention one by one. Without you, this event will not run well. But not least, to the presenters in the panel session and participants who have participated in this event. We thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if we talk about the integration of knowledge in Islamic University, we must start now. We must start now. I repeat it, we must start now. Like Elvis Presley song, "It's now or never." Yeah, I remember this song. It's now or never. Come hold me tight, and so on and so on. Tomorrow will be too late. It's now or never. My love won't wait. Yes, tomorrow will be too late. Start now or never. Yeah. Okay, from now we must think about and discuss intensively and continuously. Otherwise, if never, it means we will die. Die academically, die epistemologically. What if epistemology dies? If epistemology dies, then we can no longer move and develop, which causes the emergence of an epistemological crisis. So, the importance of this event is to encourage the integration of knowledge in Islamic University. We hope this can come true. In the future, I hope this Center of Integration of Science, UJI, Pusat Kajian Integrasi Ilmu, Win Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta, and the Faculty of Usuluddin and Triple IT and the institution related to the integration of knowledge should be able to work together to realize it. Okay, once again, we would like to thank everyone for holding this moment, even though there are screams from unknown people. Ya, kita dengar teriakan orang-orang yang tidak dikenal itu teriakan itu. But without you, we are nothing. Oke, akhirul kalam, wabillahi taufik wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh.
Baik. Kalau gitu tadi ya secara resmi sudah ditutup, walaupun nanti ada tadi session parallel session yang masih ada jam 13.30 untuk partisipan presenter. Baik, sekali lagi terima kasih ya kepada semuanya karena ini acaranya sudah selesai. Monggo kalau mau ngobrol, ya silahkan. Terima kasih sekali, Prof. Mulyadi, Prof. Osman, Prof. Jamil, Prof. Habib, Hirsin, semuanya nanti kita bisa komunikasi lagi.
Terima kasih, Prof. Habib, terima kasih, Prof. Osman Bakar, Prof. Jamil Osman.
Terima kasih.
Time we have here, and thank you for your time and participation in this conference.
Iya. Bagi peserta nanti, ya, Bagi peserta nanti jam 13.30 silahkan nanti masuk di Zoom link yang beda, di panel yang beda, 1 dan 2, 3 dan 4. Oke.
Oke, assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Sehat.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Agus.
Yep, ya, betul.
Terima kasih banyak.
Iya, ditunggu ininya, ditunggu PPT-nya, PowerPoint-nya, kirim.
Menit